Hello. Welcome to another battleship inspection in World of Warships. Bit of a reinspection, bit of a new inspection, because we are inspecting the Kremlin with the patented, trademarked Tank Plus Plus build. And if any of you have watched my a Lighthouse Moskva video from a couple of weeks ago, I basically said in that video that I'm very close to the conclusion that a Lighthouse Moskva is just how you should play Moskva in random battles. But I did say there are, some situations where, I'm not quite there yet. I think it's probably a bit better than a full Concealment Moskva build, but it's not like you're trolling to build Moskva, as a standard build, right? I am getting to the point where I think you're actually trolling to build Kremlin with a normal battleship build that is taking full concealment. I think you really are legitimately like griefing yourself for no reason by building Kremlin that way. Now, that is somewhat dependent on how you personally play Kremlin. But to me, the way that Kremlin should be played pretty much begs you to drop concealment and spec even harder into the tanking ability of the ship. So, a typical randoms battleship build will take concealment, and you will take concealment on your upgrade slot 5, and we are doing neither of those two things. And instead, what we are doing is we are taking the consumables upgrade in slot 5, which is kind of a gigantic cope 99% of the time and gives you basically no value. We are also taking a cold DCP mod in slot 1. Now, Kremlin has fast Russian DCP with a duration of only 10 seconds. So, again, cold DCP mod on Kremlin is usually a complete cope. However, because we are taking both of these things, we now have a 17-second damage control party on Kremlin that reloads in 37 seconds. We're taking improved repair party readiness, we're taking 2-point AA skill, and we're taking vigilance. So basically, we have dropped the concealment for vigilance. Now, is vigilance like the greatest skill in the game? Absolutely not. It is moderately underrated, but it's nothing insane. But basically, we're getting a Kremlin that kind of only takes about 10k when a Shima-Torp hits it, which is undeniably silly and goofy. But the main philosophy of... I don't really know if it's fair to call this a Lighthouse Kremlin build, although it kind of is, I guess. I always refer to it as the Tank Plus build. But here's the idea. I'm never going dark, buddy. Okay? I am absolutely never going dark in my Kremlin. The only way I'm going dark is if I'm on an island. And the thing that you realize when you play Kremlin a lot is, most people know this, but especially people who play the ship a lot and are pretty, familiar with the hull, its maneuverability, its angling. The ship just does not fucking die, man. I have a lot of games in Kremlin. It's actually probably my favorite battleship in the game to play solo. There's definitely better BBs in a division where you maybe have scouting from your destroyer division mate, right? You maybe need cross-mapping salvo. But man, played solo, I think Kremlin is probably my actual all-time favorite BB in the game for totally solo gameplay. It's probably between Kremlin and Incomp, but Kremlin is probably a bit even stronger. The ship just does not die, and even as someone with many, many, many games in Kremlin, I am still constantly, when playing the ship, like almost amazed at, I'm not dead. Oh, that salvo did 0 to... Oh, that Des Moines HE spammed me for 14 minutes and I'm still alive? Oh, I'm still alive. What? I'm still alive in my Kremlin? it actually amazes me, and I'm someone who has a lot of games in the Kremlin. So we were playing mostly solo the other day, and we were kind of flipping around ships, and I decided to go back to the Kremlin with the tank plus build, and I forgot just like what an absolute fucking treat it is, and how much better in randoms overall the tank plus build is than a standard BB build, because we're just dropping all of these things like concealment that just don't fucking matter at all for how I'm going to play the Kremlin, and we're building it into extra survivability. When you factor in that we're going to get our extra heal every game, right? You do not die in Kremlin without taking at least 2 mil pot, right? It's really just not a thing that will ever happen. So that's 5 heals. And we are running our consumables module in slot 5, which gives us an extra 10% duration on heals that normally heal about 18,000 a heal. So basically what we're doing is we're getting about 2,000 extra HP for each of our 5 heals, which is 10,000 HP, which is not an insignificant amount, really at all. It is definitely not insignificant. Will it win you games? Not consistently. Can it win you games? Absolutely. And we played 12 games solo queue in the Kremlin. And just to give you an idea of how hard this ship still fucks in 2025, because I constantly see people discuss on the Reddit, discuss in YouTube and on Twitch, how like, the Kremlin, used to be a beast, but it's like, it's unplayable into CVs and subs. It's just not very good in the current passive meta, right? You hear the current passive meta. Well, you know what? I don't really give a shit if the meta's passive, buddy, because it turns out when you cram a Kremlin down the entire enemy team's throat, they lose their minds, they panic, they misplay, you get gigantic damage, you have giant game impact. And you know what still absolutely fucks harder than almost every BB in the game really at tier 10 are Kremlin guns. Kremlin guns just absolutely fuck. I mean, the AP on Kremlin is absolutely fucking ridiculous. The velocity, the AP pen, the shell, like everything about it. Is it a bit of a shotgun at absolute max range? Yes. But when you're pushing in Kremlin, which is what you're supposed to be in Kremlin, and you're shooting people, 13 kilometers away, God help them, like 8 to 10 km, you're actually one of the most accurate battleships in the entire game. And then you have this railgun insanely high AP pen. And part of the big value of Kremlin AP pen is that there's a lot of ships in this game that other BBs can kind of never citadel and get to go flat. Ships like Yamato and Kremlin can kind of go perfectly flat to most BBs in the game at like 15, 16 km. And the BB shooting at them, most will just shatter on the citadel belt. And then all of a sudden, Kremlin's AP pen combined with its impact angles just let you citadel things. Things like flat broadside Yamatos at 18 kilometers. All of a sudden, you're like 50K'ing them in Kremlin if you get the dispersion to cooperate. It's absolutely disgusting. But the ship really kind of, in my opinion, like comes together when you build it this way, because it's not just that we're going to plan on pushing so we don't care about concealment. It's that by forcing yourself into this kind of all or nothing mindset, in my opinion, it just basically forces you to play the boat the way it's supposed to be played. Because, with a full conceal spec, you can get Kremlin. Kremlin's quite a stealthy battleship, right? You can get down to, I want to say like 13.5 or so KM detect, which is pretty fucking good. But the problem with getting that concealment down is you might play the Kremlin as if that concealment is going to be useful to you. And the problem with playing the Kremlin like that is it's just going to make you play it, number one, like a bit of a bitch. Number two, not to its strengths, which are fighting at closer range, pushing, taking map position, surviving for 25 years on the same rock, right? And that's what we've done in this game. We've played it a little passive until one of the DD and Torp threats disappeared. We noticed the entire enemy team is in their spawn, and so now we're just going to fucking send it. And we're going to get dug in, we're going to get stuck in on this island. And what this is going to do is just prevent anyone on the red team from playing their game. All of a sudden, any plan, any ship on their entire team has to push out of their spawn, it's over. They can never leave their spawn. If they ever try to leave their spawn, they just die to the Kremlin, right? So, it's kind of a close game. We're even on boats. And you look at my Montana, AFK and spawn. Oregon, AFK and spawn, right? Blucker, Atago, Kita, trying to farm and take the flank. Sub, torturing people on the flank. Amagi, trying to play his game, right? So, I could kite out to the flank with Preuss and Kremlin and try to farm them. I could kite out to the flank with Atago, Blucker and try to shoot the cruisers. Or I can just completely fucking discombobulate the enemy team, and then here get completely robbed from what should be at least one citadel. As you can see, the shell literally impacts him directly on the waterline for a pen on a ship with an above water citadel. It's totally fine, wargaming moment to be sure. But now all these guys are fucked. They base it. There's nothing they can do anymore because I'm still on 2/3 HP. I've still got 4 DCPs in pocket. And I'm now on this island, and they have no battleship crossfire. You see the position of their battleships. Kind of their only play to get me off of this rock would be Colombo and Oregon to both, send it on me. But the problem is I have an Oregon behind me. So no one can really send it around the north side of this island on me because they're going to push right into my Oregon, right? So if the Colombo wants to push me on the south side of the island, then he can, and he'll have a pure 1v1 with me, and he might kill me. But this is what I mean by people don't play properly when you are playing a ship like Kremlin this aggressively. A ship that's this tanky, a ship with guns that are honestly some of the very best in the entire game. At this kind of range, we basically have the best vertical dispersion in the game after Slava, right? So you slightly fuck your angling up just by a degree or two against a Kremlin at close range, and you just get absolutely massacred. It is very common to dev strike battleships with exposed citadels with front guns only at this kind of range in Kremlin, right? It's not a fluke. It happens very consistently because the guns are just insanely accurate at close range. So they all decided to push north. So my Oregon is going to run away, which is, fair. They're all pushing. So what I'm going to do, because their Oregon, you see here, has his guns the wrong way. Colombo currently has his guns the wrong way, is I'm just going to take this opportunity to sprint out. Because I want to put some pressure on these guys and not let them just play their own game. So this guy, of course, has no idea that I'm going to do this. Colombo cannot be citadeled if it's perfectly flat, by the way, if you're curious. He has to be turning in to raise his citadel out of the water. Colombo has one of the hardest to hit citadels in the game. So we don't expect citadels on him. But by sprinting out here, we've just completely made this guy panic. He's shooting the wrong ammo at us. The Vlad tries to run away. That's going to make him go flat to me. At a longer range than the last time where we got trolled. We don't get trolled that time. So he gets 30k'd. Because the reason why I'm making this play is you see what my Amagi's done is he's given up the flank. And I don't really want the Preußen and the Kremlin to push back in because our Oregon has run off into Narnia. So the Montana is going to kind of hold the Colombo there, right? And then that basically just totally frees me up to go exert a ton of pressure on the Kremlin and the Preußen because we're still on almost half HP, still have a heal in pocket, right? So effectively, because we're running these this silly goofy spec, and of course 2.8 A skill, like I said, it's the best. I've said it many times, but it's the best 2.8 A skill in the entire video game, regardless of class, regardless of ship type. 2.8 A skill just straight up wins you games very consistently. Front turret already bugs, rear turret 20Ks him. Classic artillery system. So yeah, the planes coming over us give us the heal, or sorry, not the heal, they give us the DCP back absolutely instantaneously. Because even in a game like this, where there's no planes that are manually controlled, there's a sub in my lobby. I'm on the flank with the sub. There's going to be planes above me, right? And, this is the kind of vertical dispersion we're talking about at this range, where it's just virtually pixel perfect. Now, of course, did I need to poke out from that island as far as I have? No, I could have sit on the rock. However, that would allow the Colombo maybe to shoot me. So we just come out here, and then what immediately happens? Well, the entire team shoots at us because all of a sudden there is a Kremlin in their mouth, and they're just all losing their mind. They don't care about farming Montana. They don't care about farming Oregon. They just want to kill the Kremlin that's in their ass, which is totally fair. So unfortunately, we needed one extra salvo to kill the Preußen. And because of that, you see this Kremlin is not angled remotely enough. But unfortunately, we die before we could get the 300k salvo in on Kremlin. But that's the Kremlin experience. It's a very, very repeatable experience. This was a bit higher damage than most of the games, but Kremlin still actually farms an obscene amount of damage because Kremlin does not farm damage in the way that a Thunderer, a Rhode Island, a Colombo does, right? These ships are kind of turrets where they kind of sit, 15 to 20 km from the enemy team, and they just like click people, they click people, they click people, they farm good damage per salvo. The Kremlin typically gets its damage by like running at people, and it forces bad plays. It very consistently forces bad plays, in fact. A lot of the time, people will say things like, oh, I wish people went flat to me. I wish people gamer turned in front of me. Anytime you hop into anybody's stream on Twitch and a guy gets a dev strike, 3 people in the chat are asking, why don't they go flat to me? A good part, something worth considering, if people are never flat to you, is you are probably positioning very badly. If you are playing a ship like Kremlin and you are not shooting broadsides inside of 15 kilometers like consistently, that's probably because you're just not in a good position. You're not forcing people to panic. It's actually a good testament to you being in a good position if you're getting those broadside targets. Are the people going flat to you maybe bad? Yes. But a lot of the time what happens is by running a ship like Kremlin, by running it down in Kremlin, by sprinting into the enemy spawn, by taking an aggressive central position, what you end up doing is you end up putting people in an impossible situation because you become the hard light on them, right? You're spotting them. They can't get dark. They can't go anywhere. And you're giving them a choice. Do I sit bow in and let this Kremlin farm me and let his team farm me? Or do I make an attempt to get away? And it's usually during those attempts to get away, it's where people panic. It's where they misplay. And that's where they end up going flat to you or a teammate. And your team gets absolutely gigantic amounts of damage on them. So this is how I'm playing Kremlin basically every game for the most part. Every now and then there's a game where you just have to perma run away. But Kremlin is also one of the most game impactful ships when it's permakites, and it's not because it farms damage. It's because it never dies. And that is kind of another reason that we're going with this kind of ridiculous, because tanking is the game impact, right? Map positioning can be game impact. Obviously, damage, kills is game impact. But tanking is game impact. And I want to go back to what I said earlier about how when you play Kremlin with full concealment, you can kind of bait yourself into selfish plays that maybe seem quote-unquote correct at the time, but probably end up lowering your chances of winning. And by having the 16.5 km detect, we know we're never getting dark. So we now need to play, we need to adjust our mindset. Because I'm never getting dark by running away, how does this change how I need to play the boat to have good game impact, right? And part of the value, part of the value of having terrible concealment on a ship like Kremlin is people tend to not really be able to help themselves, especially HE spamming cruisers, open water gunboat DDs. A lot of these kinds of ships, players can't really help themselves because the unfortunate reality, we've discussed many times why there is a passive meta. And there's many reasons. Bad game design, community hive mind. But one of the biggest reasons, in my mind, why we have a passive meta is because this community kind of only cares about farming a funny damage number in the top right of their screen. And they don't really care about trying to win with low damage or winning via map positioning, winning via tanking. People will play a game and they'll get 155k in their Kremlin and they'll be like, oh, I had 0 damage, right? As they're sitting on like 4.3 million pot, right? And they burned through all of their heals, received 200 plus thousand damage and lived. And that's an insane amount of game impact. You have to realize that, because you have to realize that, the average BB player, the average cruiser player, right? Like the median damage, the average damage, however you really want to look at it, like 100,000 damage is a really good game for like 90% of the player base. And that's something you need to keep in mind. Is that a little sus? Okay, maybe. But you do have to keep in mind that, like, people, something like a Montana has like 80, 90k average damage, right? 100k games, for a Gdansk player is like good, right? Statistically, we're not talking, do you think it's good? Do I think it's good? Personally, I feel pretty bad if I only do that kind of damage in one of those ships. But if you're in something like a Kremlin, a Conqueror, some of these ships that are just expert tankers, and your damage received at the end of the game is like 200 plus thousand damage and you survived, you have to realize that what you basically did is removed 2 players from the red team. Okay, this is how you have to look at this. Because there are games where I get low damage in Kremlin and I get frustrated, and then I have to like basically kick myself. I have to remind myself, like, consciously, hey, dumbass, look at the fucking damage received, right? Look at the damage tanked. You have to realize, like, the insane amount of game impact receiving 200,000 damages. We're not even talking about potential damage, right? Receiving 200k and living, you basically made 2 guys AFK the whole game. And then if you're farming even respectable-ish kind of damage, like, you have to think of it as like number of ships in the lobby, right? Like, if, let's say I get 100k, okay, that's a underlead that Salem. Really unfortunate. Probably could have like almost dev struck him because we got insane back turret dispersion. But you have to realize, like, if you're getting 100,000 damage and real world tanking 200,000, right? Like, your damage received is 200k and you survive. Like, basically you're representing like a 3-player swing, right? Because you are achieving, the game impact, assuming you kill some of those ships you're farming, right? And it's not meaningless damage. Like, you're probably taking out 1 or 2 boats, and then you're also taking out a further, 1 to 3 boats because you let them farm you. And letting people farm you is like a really underrated strategy. And what this like no concealment Kremlin build does is it forces you to play the, fuck it, let them farm me kind of gamer role, right? Because what's going to happen is I'm going to end up pushing in, we can talk about the game. And I'm actually going to break my rule for once. We always look at back-to-back games. However, we played 12 games in the Kremlin, and they were all good games. I basically had one, I don't even want to say bad game. I had one bad game where a sub griefed me the whole game. I mean, I think I still got like 200 plus thousand out of it. But we were going to, normally we always look at back-to-back games to show the quote-unquote experience more. Nice, being able to Citadel a slightly angled Vermont at 16 is pretty fucking cool. But the problem is the games that bracketed that last game we looked at, right? That last game was a really good showcase of Kremlin's ability to push and get big damage, right? Taking map position, discombobulating the enemy team, all of that, right? The problem is the games that bracketed that were just other like really good 200 plus thousand or 200k-ish damage games. And they didn't really highlight anything different. So I'm going back to this one. We played 12 games, so the last game we looked at was, I think, like game 8, and this is game 1 of the 12 we played. And the reason we're going to look at this game is this is going to be a game that, in theory, is terrible. I went into this flank to help my team, and look what happened. Every single member of my team died, aside from my Barbiano, who was forced to run away because of the enemy Salem. No fault of his own, right? And to his credit, look at this. The Gdansk is opening up on me. The Barbiano opens up on him. Gdansk doesn't want to eat the Barbiano shells, so he's forced to use a smoke, which kind of like pins him in place from farming me. So, credit to the Barbiano. The only reason he's back here behind me is because he kind of was forced to, right? But here's what's going to happen. They've got a Vermont, Kremlin, Salem, Gdansk, Barbiano, and they're all shooting at me. Now, this might be a problem in, I don't know, basically every other battleship in the game. Because even a ship like Conqueror, yeah, there's more healing potential, but this Barbiano would load the funny key and just like basically melt me, right? So because I'm in a Kremlin, he only pens superstructure, it immediately saturates, so he does no damage. Gdansk is chipping away at me from behind. Kremlin Salem are chipping away at me from behind. Vermont's chipping away. And so this entire game is basically going to consist of me running in a perfectly straight line down the 10 line while every boat on their team farms me on this flank, right? These 4 or 5 boats are just going to farm me. And there is no danger of me dying here. I mean, maybe it looks a little scary. Ooh, we're down to 40,000 HP. We're getting farmed. No. If we run out of consumables, we might die. We have consumables up, not a fucking chance, dude. And I think like part of why people just don't tank anymore consistently is they're just like they don't trust. I don't know if it's like how I want to say it, trusting your ship, but it's like you got to know your boat. Like I know I'm not dying here, right? There's no world I could die here in like anything approaching a short amount of time, right? And to be fair, I mean we did push in and get 100,000 damage, so we didn't even get like terribly low damage, but we're 8 minutes into this game, we have 100k, which isn't amazing, but we've tanked 2.5. But more importantly than the pot damage that we've tanked, it's more about rendering these people AFK. Because the problem is, this Vermont knows I'm here because I'm spotted from the moon, right? Now, he wants to push into B, but the problem with him trying to push into B is that I'm not in a Montana or a Bungo or a GK. I'm not in a ship where he can go flat to me at 18 kilometers and never take a citadel. I'm in a Kremlin. If this Vermont goes flat to me, he could randomly lose half of his fucking ship, right? So he has to kind of like respect the fact that I'm down here. And we're just going to the reason why we're still going, right? Because what we could do is we could slam on the brakes, because you see the Gdansk and the Barbiano, they finally realized, okay, this Kremlin is running into Narnia, let him run into Narnia, right? Now, what I could do is I could have slowed down a lot earlier and let the Kremlin and the Salem get closer to me and try to get better damage on them, right? But what my goal here by playing like this is I'm trying to suck some of these people in to a bad position, right? So the Vermont's already been sucked into a bad position. In a normal perfect world, he would have turned out north a long, long time ago. But because I already, if you recall, smashed him for that one citadel earlier across the map at an angle, he now respects the guns. So he waited all the way until he got to that island to turn away. And the problem is, by waiting till he got to the island to turn away, now he had to go flat to 2 of my BBs, right? Now he's in a bad position. So now that he's turned away, we're going to turn back in, because now we're finally dark with 16.5 KMD tech. But we've basically done our job. I don't want to say we've given our team a win, because our team played well, right? These guys won the A flank. They pushed aggressively north to win the middle of the map. But look at how corralled the enemy team is. If we can look at the mini-map for a second. Look at how insanely clumped up all of these guys are. And about half of the reason, because we're not going to say all, the only reason, but about half of the reason those guys are all stuck dick to butt in the same grid square is because they got baited into farming me while I ran for almost 15 kilometers away from them, right? They got baited into pushing south much farther than they should have. And now, by the time they go back, it's too late. Now my team was given that map presence. If I'm playing a full Concealment Kremlin build, and I immediately go dark on that flank the second the Gdansk gets 13.5 away from me, these guys don't get baited into chasing me. Now, on the surface level, you might say, oh, you should go, if I was playing a full Concealed Kremlin, most people would probably say, oh, well, you should go dark here, and that way you can get away, you can turn around, and you can fight them better, right? And, yeah, that would probably be a good play. But because we have this bad concealment, it's kind of the equivalent of me never going dark voluntarily, right? It's kind of the equivalent of me spamming guns on cooldown. and it baits people. This Barbiano, Gdansk, Vermont, and Kremlin all should have given up on chasing me probably within about a minute. To give some credit, they were getting some decent damage on me originally, right? There you see Kremlin's insanely thick armor coming in clutch. If he was perfectly flat, those would be citadels, but because he was angled at about 20 degrees off of flat, we get non-pens, right? But anyway, the point being, I'm repeating myself like always, is these guys all get baited into a terrible position. They finally realized, hey, we keep chasing this Kremlin, we're going to lose the fucking game. We can't keep chasing this Kremlin. And it's too late. They lost the game, right? Whereas if they had given up immediately on me, they might have put up a fight at B. We probably still win. I think our team ended up just being kind of overall better. But we're at 3 million potential tanked, right? We're still at 150 plus thousand damage. And this is the thing, it's like you need to have a bit of patience if you're playing these BBs that get game impact via tanking. And then here again, like another amazing asset of Kremlin is the insane railguns. This guy shoots and tries to angle, but we intentionally underlead him and snipe the cheek for another 30k. So I'm still even gonna end up with high damage this game, right? Just to give you some perspective, and I had multiple games like this. I might even throw up like a 5-minute clip from another game after this one that kind of shows like yet again the bully potential of Kremlin. But we played 12 games, 175,000 average damage, 2.4 million average potential damage, 82 win rate. That's in 12 solo queue Kremlin games. I mean, I'm not saying 175k average is like insane, but it's pretty good even for a ship like, a Thunder. Like if I average 175k in Thunder, I'm not like super mad about it. It's not an amazing average in a ship like Thunderer because that's all it does is farm damage. But, just perspective. We're shooting AP. We're in an AP only ship. Most of our salvos end up being bow in. Front guns only. The Kremlin still puts up damage numbers, right? That my point is, it's not just the tanking. It's not just the survivability. And the reason why it puts up those damage numbers is not because average damage per salvo is insane, because you farm crazy. We're going to get a really nice like aim bug or something here. We aim deliberately low because this guy is turning in. And he only turns in about 10 degrees, and the entire salvo goes over his entire boat, despite us aiming deliberately too low, predicting he would turn in. So, unfortunate. We probably, if we didn't get a weird aiming bug there, probably could have gotten another 20 to 40k off that Yamato, killed him. But oh well, our team has won the game. Props to the team in this case. They actually, a lot of the time when you play that tanking, kiting role, your teammates just camp on their side of spawn and lose the game for you. But, fortunately this time we had a team that didn't actually do that. But, this is the Kremlin experience, like I said, in a bad game. That was a frustrating game. I'm not going to lie. I was pretty frustrated playing that game. But, you could call it cope, but at the end of the day, like, you're giving your team so much game impact by just letting people farm you. 213,000 damage received, and we didn't die, right? And that's what I mean. So, like, the way you have to look at it is this a high damage game? Like, not really, right? If we had a better team on our flank, could we have got more damage? Oh, yeah. If we had a couple of teammates not suicide and we actually got to play our flank, we could have probably had like another 250 plus K game for sure. But it's the ability to troll these people, right? These guys are MVP partially because they farmed a bunch of damage on me. Some of these people almost exclusively shot us, right? The Vermont fired 3 or 4 salvos. The Barbiano shot at us for a couple of minutes. Gannat shot at us for a couple of minutes. Kremlin shot at us. HE only Kremlin player. They're not sending their best, obviously. But the way you need to look at this is this kind of damage received. If you're getting this in any boat, I mean, it's an insane amount of game impact. At minimum, this is worth one player having a 1 in 20 game, right? Most people can play 20 games and never hit 200,000 damage. So you take that kind of damage and live, and you've basically like nullified two players or nullified one really good player. Essentially, is kind of how you have to look at it. And then if you're doing any kind of damage in return, then obviously you're giving your team some game impact with the damage, right? That's it. That's the Kremlin experience. It's a very repeatable experience in my mind. Like we said, 175k average in the 12 games I play with this spec, but more than that, I think we only had like 4 games under 180 or something. I think most of the games were over 180. I want to say maybe like 3 or 4 were less than 180. The rest were all above. So it wasn't even like a bunch of low damage games, multiple 200k games, a bunch of games in the 190s. It's a very repeatable ship. It's very dependable, and it's because you survive, right? It's because you're in a position where a lot of other BBs would die, and they wouldn't live long enough to get like a really big juicy salvo on somebody, and then Kremlin, because you just never fucking die in the thing. It's a lot more game impactful. I wrote down how many times we died. We ended up dying in 4 games out of 12. And the lowest potential damage in a game I died was 2.4, and the rest were all 3.5 or higher, right? And that's kind of the idea, is even if you're not farming damage, you're getting a crazy amount of pot damage, you're getting a crazy amount of received damage, right? And by building the Kremlin this way, you're just forcing yourself to play it, in my mind, the correct way. Part of me dies every time I see a Kremlin kiting and getting dark at 13.5. Kind of hurts me deep in the soul a little bit. But if you know that you can't do that, then you will not be baited into doing that. And you will actually probably play better in your Kremlin. And I know this video is already going to be insanely long, but we're going to throw up a partial replay. Again, we're going to look at a third one, because with these like really aggressive pushing style videos, I do like to show like a slightly larger sample size than normal. But back to what we were talking about earlier, how some ships like Yamato can go flat to 99% of BBs. Yeah, you can't go flat to Kremlin at 18 in Yamato, buddy. Nice little 60k hit there. 4 for 4 on the Citadels. Truly, we are God's favorite son. Now we're going to do the same thing to a battleship that came out in the year of our Lord, 2024. Perfect, better dispersion, perfect aim. Oh, yeah, it's 0 damage because it's a fucking libtard. So that's pretty cool. But where are we looking at about 5 minutes of this replay? Because we've done the same thing yet again as the first replay. We've gone to an island. We're now about to be alone. Now, if we were in most BBs, we could not do this. We could not sit on this rock. Number 1, we don't have the front gun consistent firepower. Number 2, we don't have the tanking. Right? We probably couldn't afford to do this. But I'm not leaving this fucking rock, buddy. Because I'm building the Kremlin with no concealment. And you know what doesn't matter if you have no concealment? When you're dug in on a fucking island. So we're just dug in on this island. And we are going to force the red team to kill us, is what we're going to do. Could we sprint out and push at the libtard? Yes. Could we sprint out to the right, go flat to Yamato for 1 salvo, live and get away, and maybe survive? Also, yes. The problem with doing either of those two things is that will give the red team the A side of the map uncontested. Right now, it's a Smolensk and a Des Moines, and they've got a Hindenburg, Yamato, Libtard, Ven, all pushing. Do they have to respect Smolensk and Des Moines? Not a chance. But do they have to respect the Kremlin camped on the rock? Absolutely. So, what are we going to do? Well, the Hindenburg should be pushing, but instead of pushing, what does he do? Well, he slams on the brakes to farm me because That's all this community cares about. And once you realize, nice little, again, rail guns, something like a Montana probably doesn't even hit that guy in time because the shells are too slow. So we're just sitting here. And these guys are now in a really fucking shitty position, right? Yamato's dead. Libtard's on the island. Ven is on the flank. Hindenburg's gotten baited yet again, like the last replay we looked at. Another guy baited into playing wrong under the hopes of farming a Kremlin. What does the Libtard do here? Well, he could sprint at my butt, but then he sprints straight into Des Moines and Smolensk. He could back up and farm the Smolensk. He could back up and sit on the rock, but the CV's humping him, right? And at any moment, he realizes that a Kremlin can come around the island and kill him. So he's now in a shitty fucking spot yet again. The Hindenburg is finally moving up. The Ven is hitting the flank, right? These guys are not, I want to stress, they're not playing bad in the sense that they're making bad decisions based on the information that they have. I think everything these three guys are doing makes sense. It's not stupid. It's not bad gameplay. But they're forced to play a way they definitely don't want to play and is not conducive to them winning the game. And what can we do here? Well, we're in a Kremlin. So this Ven can only pen our superstructure, bow and stern with sap. So we can just back up. And again, we're kind of going with the letting them farm us thing, right? Now we go forward a little bit because the Hindenburg is pushing. So we're pushing out in the hopes of catching the Hindenburg because he's probably sprinting past the next island, right? We sprint out, we catch him, we overmatch him everywhere. I'm about to shoot this guy, but the Libtard is now spotted, and he had slowed down because he didn't want to push out. So, he's dead. Right? He gets trapped on a rock, they kill my cruisers, but that guy dies. So now, the Ven you see here, I can't remember if I even complimented this guy, but very, 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 very rare Venezia player moment where they load the AP when they should. Because Kremlin's upper belt is, I believe, 90 millimeters. His sap does not pen that. But you see here, he's doing very good damage into the upper belt with the AP. So very rare to see that. Props to this guy. 99% of end players would not be smart enough to load AP. But of course, he's in a cruiser. So, we're just shooting 457 into his 30 millimeter upper belt, right? Kuznetsov action, which actually in this case literally keeps me alive long enough to kill this guy. Insanely fun game design. But obviously we're dead to Hindenburg with the torps. So yeah, a little 5-minute engagement for almost 200,000 damage. Pinning down half of the enemy team because they're afraid to push a Kremlin. And that is the Kremlin experience. It's incredibly repeatable. I know I'm just repeating myself every time I say that. And our team does end up winning this game. And this one, unlike the last replay we looked at, I would say really does almost solely come down to the fact that we camped that island and we took out or caused the death of 4 boats, and they never were able to get it. And in fact, because we're in a CV lobby, they will never end up taking the A cap, and our team's going to end up winning on points, which is pretty cool. Yet again, our team didn't throw. They did end up trying to throw this game, but they didn't actually totally throw it. But it's repeatable, guys. This is the point I'm getting at. Like when we reviewed Marseille, anytime we play these positional, super aggressive ships, I like to do slightly more than just 2 replays because it's like, it is just insanely repeatable. I mean, truly bad, like, do 300k games happen all the time in Kremlin? In my experience, no, right? In my experience, it's kind of more challenging than most BBs to get like a 300,000 damage game in, right? Compared to Thunderer, where like you could play 20 Thunderer games and get 4 300,000+ damage games, right? Like it literally has happened to me. A ship that just effortlessly farms damage, right? That doesn't really happen in Kremlin. But the thing is, like, bad games almost don't happen in Kremlin either. You don't randomly die in the ship. You give your team insane game impact, even in games where you don't get good damage. And, like, I would still call, 186k good damage, right? But it's kind of like the only battleship that really forces this level of respect from people. Or they don't respect it, right? You either fight players who don't respect the Kremlin, you dev strike them, or you fight players who do respect the Kremlin and they play extra scared to fight you at close range, as they kind of should. Um, so we're gonna hop back in the port and we're gonna go over the on surface level silly goofy spec that I'm just gonna say is how you should build Kremlin. I don't ever play Kremlin without this spec. I think that's the important takeaway. Um, I will play something like Moskva in clan battles with a normal build. I will just simply never play the Kremlin with a normal build, basically ever again. Okay, so basically there are a few deviations from a standard Kremlin build. We are in fact taking Cold ECP mod. Okay, we are in fact taking Cold ECP mod. This is whatever. Aiming system, as always. Now, normally you would run prop mod on Kremlin. We never claimed to be normal now, did we, fellas? So, we're running DCS mod 2. And so, this combined with the flag basically means that we take like 35-second fires. It's kind of silly. And then we're taking Ship Consumables mod 1, which is an insane skill that you basically take on nothing other than the tank plus builds, like on Kremlin and Conqueror. I think those are like the only ships where it's actually good on. And it actually is good, because again, we don't give a fuck about Concealment. We do not need Concealment the way we are playing Kremlin, the way it should be fucking played. Reload, you could definitely run the Ledge Mod, which is pretty solid with the way that we're playing. The problem I have with Kremlin's Ledge Mod, though, is ultimately you lose the range for only about a second of reload. Now, the way I'm playing Kremlin, I don't even think the Ledge Mod is bad. The thing that you have to keep in mind is Kremlin guns have so much pen and they're so fast, even though that they're not the most accurate. When you run the Ledge Mod, you lose a substantial amount of range. You go from 20.7 to like 18.5. And I don't know about you, but I get a lot of damage in Kremlin between 18.5 and 27.7. It happens very consistently. And the thing is that 1 second off the reload, literally a single 20,000 damage salvo in the range where Ledge Mod fucks you has already made up for a 20-minute game worth of Ledge Mod spamming on cooldown, right? And you're losing vertical dispersion. You're actually giving up. You get worse vertical dispersion if you run the Ledge Mod. So it's a super sus Ledge Mod. Is it funnier? Yeah, but it's honestly just not good overall. So we're not running it. Better dispersion. We constantly are clapping cheeks in Kremlin at medium and long range anyway, so even not trying to, right? We're playing close, but we're still getting big damage at range. So my dog is tap dancing all over the house. God bless. So here's the build. It's silly. It's goofy. Absolutely. Normal BB build, we would probably run Shell Feeder, 2.AA, AR, IRPR, Concealment, Emergency Repair Expert, and Fire Prevention, right? So we're dropping the Concealment, and we're grabbing Vigilance because it's just funny. There's really no other reason. Is Vigilance good on Kremlin? Not really, but it's funny, okay? It's silly to have 53% torp reduction instead of 46. And it's more that there's really nothing I give a shit about taking, I think, is the more important thing. Because we've given up Concealment, that frees up 4 points, right? Now, we're not running heavy AP because, again, this is the tank plus build, right? So basically, the thought process is you give up Concealment and you probably grab basics of survivability, because then you take 30-second fires. That's a little bit more silly than taking 35-second fires, undeniably. But there's no value in any other 2-point skill but Vigilance. There's no value in any other 1-point skill but the 3 that we're taking. So, it's kind of whatever you're feeling. You're undoubtedly slightly tankier with basics, but part of the funniness is coming from taking this skill, which gives us an instant 3 seconds off the heal cooldown. So probably not necessary. You could definitely easily take basics of survivability, but the Vigilance is funny. It's actually, like I said, it's not the greatest skill. It's insanely underrated though. It is like legitimately crazy, underrated skill. It's just that the 2.8 skill is so broken, you kind of only ever take that. But because we're playing a ship where we don't care about concealment, then we can take vigilance. And it's really funny when like 10 Shimakaze torps hit your belt and doesn't kill you. Like, that's a funny time. It's undeniably silly and goofy that 10 Shima torps cannot kill you. And it's come in handy a couple of times when I've botted the fuck out. But that is the build. I'm never. I would say I almost always shoot AP in Kremlin, but Kremlin HE is actually kind of nasty. Big damage, big fire chance. You shouldn't be an AP purist in Kremlin, although I kind of typically become one. But you either run Vigilance and Emergency Repair Specialist, or you run Basics of Survivability, and you are just basically unkillable. That's the whole idea, is you are unkillable because of the spec. You're extra unkillable, right? Because again, you're going to get to 5 heals on Kremlin, and this alone is going to give you an extra 10,000 HP, right? Running this instead of prop, running cold DCP mod is going to probably end up taking 10 to 15k off the fire damage you receive every game. So we're just becoming completely fucking unkillable. And what's happening is, because we've artificially boxed ourselves into this weird build, what it does is it forces you to play the Kremlin the correct way. That's what it does, right? I wouldn't say that about Lighthouse Moskva. Although, personally, I'm never playing Moskva in randoms ever again without Lighthouse. I understand the appeal of Concealment. I don't understand the appeal of Concealment on Kremlin. Maybe that's a hot take. I feel like people care about Concealment on their battleship way too much. If you're kiting in the open water, is Concealment on your battleship good? Yes. But why the fuck are you kiting in the open water in the fucking Kremlin, buddy? Think about it. Get some help. Get on a fucking rock. Tank for the team. Play the fucking game. Push in there. Kremlin is so good, dude. You know, I know I'm not trying to turn this into just a Kremlin review. I know we're trying to like re-review it with the tank plus spec, but like, dude, Kremlin is such a fucking beast. I mean, the very fucking idea that this ship doesn't absolutely lay pipe in 2025 to me is like legitimately unbelievable. I mean, it's one of my best performing battleships I have in my port. Like, I know my win rate is at least 70% solo in it. Like, I can't say that of a lot of BBs. Like, a lot of my battleships have a really high division win rate. You know, but I'm not, God's gift to battleship gaming by any means, right? I mean, most of my BBs don't have that kind of a win rate solo. And then the Kremlin does. Like, it's well over 70 in a div, and it's over 70 solo. And it's just because of the game impact. You're always impacting the game. Are you getting big damage? Impacting the game. Are you getting no damage, but soaking up the damage of 5 enemy ships? Big game impact. Are you, like that last replay, just sitting on a rock saying, come on, motherfuckers, let's go? Forcing people to push you in a synchronized fashion? Newsflash, they're never synchronized, right? Getting 3 kills, 185k, stalling the enemy flank for 5 full minutes solo, right? The Kremlin is just like the definition of game impact, and the reason why you're building it this way is to increase the amount of game impact it has. Lack of concealment means you're spotted. Being spotted means they shoot at you. Them shooting at you is game impact. Dropping the concealment allows you to take other things. Those other things increase your tankiness. That's more game impact, right? I'm losing my voice because I'm sick. And we are rambling, and this video is probably well over an hour. So I'm going to end it there. It's how you should play Kremlin. I'm just going to say it is how you should play Kremlin. This was a build I played on and off over the years, over the last year or so. I actually will respec Kuznetsov for this build. If I've played Slava, for example, and I want to play Kremlin again, I actually will not play Kremlin without this build. I will spend the Commander XP to retrain the Captain. I see no point in playing this ship with full conceal. Let's all grow a pair and fucking push, baby. Passive meta, my ass. Y'all are just choosing to play passive. Please stop. Get some help. If the boat sinks, you're not going to die IRL. Thank you for watching, as always, and we will see you in the next one.